My name is Jeff Haggray, Executive Director of the American Baptist Home Mission Societies and Judson Press. I am very pleased to greet you today as you celebrate the 128th Founders Day celebration at the Morehouse School of Religion. To my good friend, Dean Joseph Evans, the trustees, faculty, alumni, students, and many friends of Morehouse School of Religion, I understand that you have an amazing lineup of speakers and guests during this celebration, and I pray God's blessings and Godspeed be with you as you celebrate. Thank you so much.
I'm Joseph Evans, Dean of the Morehouse School of Religion, and welcome to our Morehouse School of Religion Founders Day. We are here today with the help of Judson Press, and we ask you to go to judsonpress.com and look at the canon of books that you can purchase, and look for my books as well. Amazing. Our new book has just come out, The Polished King, The Living Words of Martin Luther King Jr. It is available now just in time for the King holiday. Now, our theme this year is the courage to build Black religion, our quest and development of HBCU education. And we use as a theme Joshua 1:7, chapter 1, verse 7 through 9. Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed. For the Lord our God is with you wherever you go. Now, a very special guest. Mr. Marc Morial is the president of the National Urban League. In 2003, he began his tenure. In 1992 through 1994, Mr. Morial served as a senator in the Louisiana legislature. Mr. Morial was elected mayor of New Orleans in 1994 and served to 2002. He was the city's youngest elected mayor. In 2001, Mayor Morial served as president of the United States Conference of Mayors. He's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and the Georgetown Law Center. Mr. Morial is the son of the first African-American mayor of New Orleans, Ernest Dutch Morial, and Sybil Hayden Morial, a lifelong educator who served as the dean at Xavier University, also located in New Orleans. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Senator, and Mr. President.
Hey, Dean Evans, thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on your leadership, and congratulations on the celebration of the continuing work of the Morehouse School of Religion. You continue to impact many, many leaders all across the nation. So thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. Well, to start out with just a general question, how important is HBCU education at present?
Historically Black colleges and universities are part of and indispensable to the African-American liberation movement in this country. Founded certainly after the Civil War, many founded in the days of Reconstruction or thereafter. It was a way that created a pathway for African Americans into, let's call it the middle class, or also into positions of great leadership. So I think what's so fascinating is that many historically Black universities were founded by religious organizations, influenced by religious organizations, and supported by religious organizations who had a moral commitment to assisting what were called the freedmen after the Civil War took place. Of course, later on, you had the public historically Black colleges and universities, land grant and otherwise, which were really founded in the post-Plessy era as a way of keeping Black people out of mainstream colleges and universities. What's remarkable is that these institutions have survived and many have thrived. What's remarkable is that they continue to produce large numbers of African Americans who achieve leadership positions in corporate, government, politics, higher ed, and the media. And I think there is a sense today that we need to invest more, nurture more, develop more historically Black colleges and universities across the nation. They are institutions that have withstood the test of time. They are institutions that are indispensable. And even though today many African Americans attend mainstream universities, historically Black colleges and universities will always remain essential and indispensable to the liberation, the freedom, and the justice movement for Black people in this country.
That's powerful, and thank you. We may have to come back to that liberation motif, but right now, I want to know, what was it like growing up in New Orleans, and what was it like growing up as a Morial? How much pressure was that?
Well, I think it's so interesting. As a boy, my memories are of my father, who was still, in those days, who was indispensably involved in the civil rights movement. He was a civil rights lawyer who worked with the Legal Defense Fund, then known as the Inc. Fund, alongside of Hbcu, bringing cases to desegregate taxicab schools, movie theaters, and public buildings in Louisiana in the 50s and 60s. I remember his work as president of the NAACP branch when I was a little boy. My mother was a teacher and an activist. My sense of growing up was that my parents were always busy with a combination of work and community service. So the family, you went places with them because that's how childcare worked. You just rolled. My father was going out on a Saturday morning. He was going to his law office. He was going to the ILA, International Laborers Association Hall for a meeting. He was going to roll through some churches for some other. So you were just rolling with him. That's how it worked for me and my brother and for my sisters much of the time. My father's political career came later. He was a legislator, a judge, and later mayor of New Orleans. Let me tell you what was so essential. We literally grew up on the campus of Xavier and Dillard. And I grew up 2 blocks from Southern University at New Orleans. The library at Southern University at New Orleans was very important to me. I utilized that library a lot when I was in middle school and in high school as a place to do research and a place to study, because while it was the library of Southern University in New Orleans, it was essentially open to the community. And I lived in Pontchartrain Park, just a few blocks away. So the campus environment, when I grew up, my closest friends were the sons of Norman C. Francis, the president of Xavier. So we spent a great deal of time, many community activities. A pool we could swim in was at Dillard University. The historically Black college environment and experience was a big part of growing up Black in New Orleans in those days. And I did not go to a historically Black university because my parents, who had attended and wanted us to do what they couldn't do, right? They were very determined for us to take the step to walk through the doors that the civil rights movement had opened. And that was their determination. Nonetheless, in my work and in my life, I got this incredible opportunity for 5 years to serve on the faculty, adjunct faculty of Xavier University, teaching there when Norman Francis called me and said, one of my professors is out sick for the semester. I need you to do me a favor. I need you to teach this class in constitutional law and business law if you can. I mean, I was 27 at the time. And I was nervous, but I said, boy, yeah, great. I'll take the opportunity. And I ended up being there, 5 or 6 years, loved every minute of it, and had that incredible experience to be a part of the Xavier University community. And later on, I just finished about 2 years ago, a 6-year term as a member of the board at Xavier University. So historically Black, even though I went to mainstream institutions, the value proposition, my sister went to Xavier, my mother spent a number of years, much of our career as a dean at Xavier University. Our affection for Xavier and Dillard and Suno is strong because our family members and our life experiences were, so linked to those schools. HBCUs are essential to the nation.
Yeah. Thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I want to focus on America at large. And I'm thinking politically and socially. And then let's narrow our questions and answers to economic and health disparities. And then finally, I would like to talk about voter rights in the upcoming elections, and especially in Georgia. But let's start this way. If you were beginning your National Urban League annual report in your annual address, how would you describe the moral and maybe the ethical state of the country?
If I were giving the State of Black America report, I would say that the moral and ethical underpinnings of this nation are severely challenged at this point. The sense of morality requires a sense of justice and fairness. And the underpinnings of the attack on democracy from January 6th and beyond strike at the essence of fairness and justice in this country, and that is the fairness and the justice of everyone participating in the political system. And that is challenged today in great many ways by some very powerful interests in this country. I would remind people that notwithstanding progress that we've made as a nation and as people, economic disparities remain wide. Educational disparities remain too wide. Health disparities are still a reality for every community across the nation. That the criminal justice system is severely broken, and that we have work to do. And if we do not recognize these challenges, we are threatened with going backwards. Going backwards. This is the key to now. I've always been an optimist. I've always believed in progress. I've always been raised to be aspirational, understanding the work that the civil rights movement did to open doors for all of us. But now I feel that the challenge that really was brought on and elevated by Trumpism and nationalism and the white supremacy movement in America challenges a great deal of that progress. And we see it in voting rights most markedly today. So we face these challenges, but I would also say we have no time for cynicism. We have no time for complacency. We have no time to feel sorry for ourselves. History teaches us, the shoulders on which we stand teach us that we have to forge ahead and fight harder and work harder and confront what we must confront.
Well, let me ask it. Thank you for that. Let me ask you this. Would you or do you support universal healthcare system in America?
I think we should have healthcare access for everyone. How you get there is worthy of a debate. But I think healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Education is a right, not a privilege. Quality housing is a right and not a privilege. And I believe that a modern society has to understand these economic rights. And it is fair to have a debate about how you get there, how you achieve universal access to quality healthcare, how you achieve the notion of, if you will, quality housing that's affordable, safe, and efficient for everyone. Or how do you achieve an educational system that creates an opportunity for everyone to achieve the best, and everyone to finish high school and have an opportunity for post-secondary success? So, I fundamentally believe that. And I think, you have to sometimes debate the methods of getting there. Sometimes the how you get there sometimes clouds the here is what the objective ought to be, to provide health care to all.
Yeah. Martin King, in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? I've read it several times, but there are perhaps two sentences in that book that continues to haunt me to this day. And one of the sentences is, Martin King said that in this nation, we either have to have guarantee full employment or guaranteed income. How does that resonate today?
I believe that I think that today, given what we see, guaranteed income or a basic income should be the right of all people. And the reason why is we see economic stress. I heard the mayor of New York on television this morning talking about how a third of the people in New York were paying 50% or more. I believe that was the number, or 30% of all renters were paying 50% or more of their take-home income in rent. I mean, that's a stunning number. How can you survive if half your money goes right out the door for rent? You haven't paid for electricity. You've not paid for food. You certainly haven't paid for anything else. How can you, without living on some sort of borrowed money, living off of a credit card that you never pay down, living on payday loans that you never pay off? How can you, and against that backdrop, we are worse off today than we were in the year 2000. And that compels us to respond. So either we have to give guaranteed income, or we have to subsidize greatly the cost of housing in the country. Something has got to give so that the average working men and women and families have a shot for quality of life. We have gone, the data shows this. The data supports this. This is not a Marc Morial pronouncement. State of Black America data shows this, that we, when it comes to basically take-home pay, we are not where we were just 20 years ago.
That statistic that you just shared with us in New York, that's offensive and absurd.
And it's absurd. And let me tell you, it's the case in Atlanta, New Orleans, Chicago, Los Angeles. My recent visit, it was just before COVID closed. The COVID pandemic really started, to Los Angeles. And I hadn't spent any time in Los Angeles in a bit. And the visibility of the people who are living without a home on the streets of Los Angeles. And what I saw were, the profile was not simply what you may have customarily seen with the homeless population. You saw young people. I saw white people. I saw young Black people. I saw families with children. You know, we have an affordability crisis in this country, but one of the things, and this is to interject, my point of view, you had a president who put a plan out there called Build Back Better that would take steps to address and alleviate this, and you can't get it through the Congress of the United States. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel we're also at a time when many of our elected leaders are simply out of touch. Mm-hmm. They're really out of touch with where the country is. They're out of touch with where the country is going. They're living in a proverbial past. And the hardest thing for us to reconcile, because we had 40 to 50 years where we made consecutive and continuous economic progress and social progress as a nation, from the 1940s post the New Deal, into the Great Society, into the second half of the 20th century. And 2000, we saw the beginning of a reversal of that. Home ownership rates lower than they've been for 50 years. Take-home pay levels not keeping up, indeed, with inflation. Debt held by students at astronomical and enormous levels. These are the realities, and not to be a cynic, not to be a pessimist, not to be a downer, but leaders have to confront the reality and be compelled to act. So Martin Luther King and his philosophy certainly provide what I call a framework of how we should think about these issues. And you know, because you're a student of Dr. King, that his ministry began to transition before his death to a broader ministry around economics and poverty and economic justice and the Poor People's Campaign and his participation in the garbage worker strike in Memphis all underscored the commitment and the transition of his ministry at the time.
Yeah. So that kind of segues from the economic stressors and strains that people of all colors in this country are experiencing. Let's look at January 6, 2021. The United States Capitol was under siege. People were injured. People were killed. What lay at the taproot of this rage, Mr. Mayor?
I think a deep, deep resentment about the browning of America. I think a deep, deep resentment that the patron saint of white nationalist politics in America, Donald Trump, was fairly and squarely defeated. I think resentment, which began with the election of Barack Obama and this idea that this multiracial coalition came together to elect Joe Biden and really dump Trump and remove him from office, was one of the animators of this, because you can't separate January 6th from Charlottesville. And Charlottesville was all about protecting white Confederate monuments from being removed. So we have to see, as I like to say, all of these things as the fruit of the same poisonous tree. And I think there's a deep resentment. Now, in fact, I think that many white Americans, not just Black Americans, face some of the economic stress that I've been talking about. The difficulty in making ends meet. The idea that I can't make it and that I'm going backwards. I think where things get confused is where people assign the responsibility and blame. And I think with Trump's sort of philosophy was, let me blame immigrants, let me blame China and trade, let me blame policies that help people of color for the stresses that many white Americans face, when the stresses that many white Americans face in some instances, not in all instances, have their same roots in the overall stresses that people of color may face from an economic standpoint. The diminution of jobs with quality wages, the decline in manufacturing, the difficulty because of how the education and workforce systems work in this country of people being prepared for these new technology jobs. So I see this animation, which is, fueled by racist rage, right? Combined with some legitimate grievances on economics, right? And those grievances and those concerns about economics are the same that many Black people face in America today. So, to be, clear about it, and that is where we are. And we have this quote unquote divided politics, but what we have is tension over the vision for the future. I embrace an American future which is multiracial. I think it is glorious. I think it is powerful. I embrace an America that is multicultural and committed to democratic values and committed to principles like equity and justice for all and equal economic opportunity. I'm committed to work towards that, right? And I think that to me should be driving not only who we are, but what we want to be in this country today.
Mm-hmm. So, in light of the lack of confidence in democratic institutions now, which I believe were perpetuated by the former president of the United States and his cohorts, let me ask you this. Can we have confidence now in the United States Congress to prove what all of us already know about the former president and his cohorts? Will the Congress hold the president responsible and his cohorts for this treasonous action?
I believe they must. If they do not, they shirk their duty. The difficulty is that those in the former president's party appear to take a position that they will defend him at all and any cost. And that's inconsistent with anything we've ever seen in the modern history of this country. In the Nixon years, Republicans turned against Richard Nixon, notwithstanding the fact that he had won re-election in 1972 by a wide margin and was still president of the United States. Trump is the former president of the United States. So I believe very firmly that the Congress is on trial, and we have to hold them accountable to holding the president accountable. Now, I noticed today that the Justice Department brought sedition charges against the Oath Keepers, and I think the Justice Department appears to be determined. And this is where we should keep our eye, because Congress can write a report and hold people in contempt. The Justice Department can put people on trial, prosecute them, convict them, and jail them, and make them pay the penalty. So in the analysis, while both are important, what the Justice Department is doing, what that criminal investigation that is being carried out is all about, I think is perhaps long-term as important. People have to pay consequences. Consequences means if you have thought to overthrow this government, then you need to pay the cost and pay time. Pay with time.
To borrow from St. Augustine, amoral. Oftentimes we talk about morality and therefore being ethical, but there is an amorality, a numbness, a nihilism, a fatalism. How close are we as a country to an amoral? And the reason I'm asking that, my sense is, and I hope I'm wrong, that the institution, and I'm staying with the Congress for a moment, is behaving as though they are amoral. Is that?
Look, I think that we're all having a difficult time understanding the conduct of many members of Congress, the behavior of many members of Congress, the rhetoric of many members of Congress, because it's so inconsistent with their oath of office. It's so inconsistent with what we've seen in the past. It seems as though the amorality and the willingness to say we're going to politically win no matter what the cost, which is what you're really talking about, it threatens this great nation in a way that maybe it hasn't been threatened since the 1850s or maybe the 1950s. We're in one of those moments, but I want to just appeal to all the people of goodwill, you see what happens is if we give up and give in, if we surrender because things are difficult and tough, then we have allowed the amoral, the immoral, the contra-moral, the nationalists, the supremacists, the haters to win. Part of their strategy is beat, and force them to quit. I'm not going to quit.
No.
You're not going to quit. We
No.
cannot quit.
Right.
In this important, and I'm not an alarmist, but I'll tell you two things. Dr. Norman Francis at Christmas dinner, we had a chance to talk on the side. He's 90 now, President Emeritus of Xavier University. And he said to me, this looks like a civil war to me. This smells like a civil war to me. My mother, who's 89, has told me repeatedly she's alarmed because this looks and smells like the 1950s all over. That these alarmists seem even worse than some of the old Leander Perez, Lester Maddox, George Wallace, characters of the 1950s and 60s. These are people who seem even more extreme, and that is, I think when I hear it from the elders, when I hear it from people, I say we have to not give in or give up. We have to recognize that we're being challenged, and we have to respond to that challenge.
So let's turn to voter rights. First of all, can you help us understand the Freedom Act? How important is its passing through Congress for Americans, and particularly, if it may, for Black people?
So maybe the easiest way to understand the Freedom to Vote Act, fundamentally what it does is it creates standards, national standards, that every state and county must adhere to when it comes to the time, place, and manner, the conduct of our federal elections. That's what it does. So, okay, nice talk, nice legal jargon. What does that really mean? So, an example, in 2020, many states, many counties allowed vote by mail because we were in a pandemic, allowed and expanded early voting because we were in a pandemic, that made it easier for people to vote. Some states set up drop boxes to pick up ballots because people were concerned about the conduct of the post office. After January 6th, many of these same states began to pass laws which banned vote by mail, severely restricted early voting, limited the number of drop boxes. What the Freedom to Vote Act would give people as of right the ability to vote by mail, as of right a certain window for early voting, as of right a number of things like online voter registration. So the bill protects many of the things that the American public likes, many of the methods that are highly popular when it comes to the conduct of our elections. Now, it does a range of other things, but that's the best way for people to be able to understand it, keeping in mind that 70% of all people who voted in 2020 voted in a way other than going to the polling place on election day. 70% voted by mail, voted early, voted absentee, put their ballot in a drop box. So the American people like that. For those that administer elections, it made the process of counting easier. It meant you had less long lines, less machine breakdowns. Some states are, and there are one or two states, Arizona being one, they've closed hundreds of polling places. They're going to say you can only vote in person, but you got to go 25 miles or 50 miles to get to the polling place. They're literally trying to make it more difficult for Americans to vote. They're literally erecting barriers. They're putting splinters and tacks on the highways. They are making it harder for people to vote, and it's targeted at Black people, brown people, indigenous people, young people, and disabled Americans, the Americans who have the highest propensity to vote for someone other than the GOP.
So thank you for clarifying that and simplifying it for us. Well, tell us about the John Lewis Voter Rights Bill and how is that different from the Freedom Act? And
So
why
the
is
John Lewis bill has its roots in the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which the Congress passed to enforce the 15th Amendment, which was ratified by the states in the 1860s. That's the John Lewis bill. What the John Lewis bill fundamentally does is it repairs breaches in the 1965 Voting Rights Act that were engineered by decisions or created by decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court. So in Shelby County versus Holder, Supreme Court says that the Justice Department's pre-approval provision that applies to southern states, where southern states, when they change their election laws, when they move a precinct, when they restrict early voting, you've got to get approval of the Justice Department. It wiped that provision out, saying it was old and out of touch with the times. It was a poorly reasoned, bogus decision by the Supreme Court. I'm calling it that as a lawyer. It was an intellectual coup by the Supreme Court, very retrogressive, and has done enormous damage. It literally unleashed all of these voter suppression efforts around the nation. The John Lewis bill would fix that, restore the pre-clearance or pre-approval provision. The Supreme Court, in a decision last year, literally rewrote, in terms of how they interpret its application, the remaining provision that applies when you bring a lawsuit against discriminatory practices or discriminatory maps, rewrote it to make it far more difficult to prove discrimination in a federal voting rights case. All of these judicial decrees are, to me, the Supreme Court functioning like a super legislature, right? Going far beyond their constitutional responsibility. The Supreme Court has generally been reluctant to strike down acts of Congress in deference to a co-equal branch of government. They're much more inclined to strike down state statutes, local ordinances. But in this new conservative activist environment, they appear to be willing to do anything to shut down the progress that we've made and roll the clock backwards. This Supreme Court, which was empowered because Mitch McConnell got rid of the filibuster. Mitch McConnell got rid of the filibuster. That's why these three justices were confirmed. But we don't have the courage among 50 Democrats to set the filibuster aside to protect the American people's right to vote.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I don't hear mainstream media making that clarification. They keep talking about the filibuster and the 50 Democrats, but they don't remind us that the 3 Supreme Court justices that were pushed through the Congress was because he used the bully pulpit and got rid of the filibuster.
We have to continue to say that because there's a great deal of inconsistency and a great deal of hypocrisy, in what we see. And I'm being pinged by my team about my next
Sure.
call.
Let me try to just, we have 2 questions. I guess I can combine them. Number one, Georgia is the center of the political universe for this election cycle, 2022, and really 2024. Can you explain to us how important it is for us to register to vote and go to the polls in November? And let me combine it. Will the National Urban League be supporting voter registration across the country? And how can the National Urban League support local churches in registration?
So we will be doing a civic engagement effort in 2022. We haven't outlined the parameters of what it is, but we'll work with churches. We'll be a resource for churches to assist them in conducting civic engagement, voter registration, voter education, and get out the work on their own. When I think of Georgia, I think of Martin Luther King. I think of Julian Bond and Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young and Hosea Williams. I think of John Lewis. I think of legendary voices amongst Black electeds. I think of Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams and John Ossoff. I think of so many who have been political pioneers. Georgia has become ground zero. No one expected Georgia to go blue. Mm-hmm. It was the shot heard round the world. Mm-hmm. Georgia goes blue. The red clay, and Georgia goes blue. Mm-hmm. The home of Martin King, and Georgia goes blue. Mm-hmm. And not only does it go blue, it elects a Black man as a U.S. Senator for the first time since in Georgia's history. Mm-hmm. Powerful, incredible. Mm-hmm. And Georgia, therefore, because of all of that success, has also become the epicenter of the backlash and the epicenter of voter suppression. And so this fall, with Stacey Abrams running for governor, Raphael Warnock running for re-election as a candidate for the U.S. Senate, Georgia will be all eyes, not just of the nation, but of the world, will be in Georgia.
Well, I certainly want to thank you. Just a final question. Who makes the best gumbo in your house?
My mother.
Who does?
My mother. Always got to be your mama's gumbo now.
Was it seafood or filet?
Well, it's a little of both. We like it seafood. We like it chicken and okra. You got to add a little filet to thicken it up. The thing about gumbo, there's a lot of ways to make it. Mm-hmm. You can do some combos. I love it. My mother's gumbo is the best. If I go out and I want to buy it outside of my mother's house, I go to Dookie Chase's.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best.
It is the best. You're right. You're right. Well, the late Frances McGarry, and the former First Lady of Second Zion Baptist Church, of course, her husband you knew, Reverend Dr. Matthews McGarry Sr., she said to me one time, she said, "Joseph, baby, if the roux is wrong, the gumbo wrong."
Yes.
Isn't that right?
It's right. The roux is the foundation.
So
if you can't get the roux right, it ain't gumbo.
It ain't gumbo. And that's how I want to end it. I know that you wrote a book on the Gumbo Coalition, and I just want to use that metaphor. If the country's democratic roux is wrong, the country's democracy, its roux is wrong. And you have been a freedom fighter. You stayed on the wall. You're a liberation brother. Proud of you, one of the most brilliant of your generation. And we want to support you and with an invitation. And we'd love for you to come down and speak to us, even in chapel. Would you come?
Yes, I would be absolutely honored to do it.
We're going to have you come and go ahead and let you cut it loose And we thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you in Atlanta. Hit me up.
We will. And I'll be there for the candle. I'm going to be receiving the candle this year. I'm very honored. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So let me know. I'm certainly ready to come and come to chapel or come talk to the students and engage in some dialogue and give and take and learn.
Bless your heart, man. Well, once again, brother.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate what you're doing. Before you know it, I'm gonna be coming down there and enrolling. Before you know it.
I hope you do, man. I hope you do. Blessings on you, man. Right. This is Marc Morial, the president of the National Urban League, and we love him and we thank him for taking time. Once again, thank you, Judson Press. Thank you to Saheed and Linda behind the scenes. And please, please support the National Urban League, the resources, easy access. We can do this.
And let me just give a shout out for the Atlanta Urban League, Nancy Flake Johnson in Atlanta doing incredible work, and Urban League leaders in 92 communities across the nation. Check in with the Urban League nearest you, but also follow the National Urban League at Nat Urban League on all social media channels. You can follow me at Marc Morial on all social media channels. Keep the faith. God bless.
God bless you, sir.
Take you. Care. Appreciate it. I'm going to hop. We'll be in touch, Dean. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you,
Loved
Doc.
every minute of it. All right.
You blessed me today, Doc.
Yeah.